Welcome back to New Thought Life, to these series of vlogs that we're doing on the book Awakened Giant Sleeping Spirit. Today we're going to go all the way back to the very introduction of the book to talk about some of the characters in the book and why these characters were written in the fashion that they were, and some of the imperfections that we find in spiritual people. I'll start by just reading a short couple of paragraphs starting page 1 in the introduction. It says, we all have problems. How true that is. Every human being alive has them. Some are simple and others are more difficult and follow us well down the spiritual path. The characters in this book have a myriad of problems ranging from serious drug addiction to depression. And I would add overeating, anxiety, stress. And just because we're on the spiritual path doesn't mean we're not still dogged by some of these problems. I've been dogged by many of these problems well into my spiritual practice. I've been seeking a spiritual way of life for over 30 years, and yet I still have these daily problems with what other people think and how others perceive me. I'll be tempted to put on the mask that this is the person that I want people to see. These are things that haunt us well into our spiritual life. They can be things gambling or credit card debt, these types of things that we think, well, I'm a spiritual person. Why do I still have these problems? Employment, being able to make a real living, being able to find a way to pursue our heart's desire, all of these things. It says the good news is that even if the problems the characters are dealing with are not familiar to you, the answer to our problems are the same as the answers they find. The answers in this book apply not only to the characters in this book, but also to the difficulties in your own life, whatever they may be. Spiritual teachers are among us, traveling in the bodies of normal men and women, yet they are so often perceived as flawless. People have this perception that because of a spiritual leader, many of the people that I have come to be my guiding lights are not flawless people. I need to understand why that is. Our intention of this book is to dispel the idea that our spiritual leaders need to be perfect. One intention of this book is to dispel the idea that a spiritual teacher needs to be perfect. It's not in our We just look at our own lives. It's not in our perfection that people love us. It's in our imperfection. And we only need to just look at our own experience for that. I can think of two things. One of the early spiritual mentors, and a man who's still incredibly important in my life and has been for more than 30 years, is a person that, he's come to grow so much. So I'm not talking about a person that still exists. I'm talking about a person that still existed then that helped me to find some footing in the spiritual life. I saw him lose his temper a couple of times and get into altercations with people on 2 different occasions that I can just think of. Another man was a man who traveled around and gave spiritual talks and was just a wonderful guy who I was so fortunate to have him come and stay in my home when he came to the Seattle area, here where I live. He came and he had lost his glasses, and he brought out of his pocket this little carved bear, and he said, "This bear is a powerful bear," he told me, "and it will help me to find anything that I've lost." And he used it like a little divining rod, just walking around with this little bear looking for his glasses. And of course I thought, oh my God, here I've come to worship this guy as a spiritual leader, and he's really a man that looks for his glasses using a little carved bear. One of the things that I look back on, he's been gone for many years and made his transition many years ago. And I look back on that now and I just think, man, that's just one of the sweetest memories I have of that man, is that he wasn't a perfect person. he had little oddities, and he was very open and talked about his own resentments and the things in his life, his own relationship problems, the problems he had raising his own children, these kinds of things. It's not in the perfections that we fall in love with people. It's sometimes when we look at our own experiences, the imperfections. The spiritual leaders in this book were written intentionally with the idea that these are people that have real problems. They're not perfect people. These are people that have found a spiritual way of life. And I can just tell you from my own experience, I don't lead a spiritual way of life as an attribute to the kind of man I am. I live a spiritual way of life because without pursuing that at depth, I'm shooting sparks. I'm creating disharmony everywhere I go. I'm confusing people. People have a hard time understanding what it is that I want to make them happy, my own family and children. That my only hope is to pursue this spiritual life. And in pursuing this spiritual life, I need to seek out spiritual leaders. I need to seek out spiritual mentors, spiritual friends, and people that are with me on this path. And none of them are going to be perfect. If I look for that, everybody's going to disappoint me. That has to come through this connection that I have with this power greater than myself. Everyone else is going to disappoint me. So the characters in the book, Awakened Giant, I want you to remember that as you're reading this book and you're doing the studying on it. Remember that these people are not meant to be perfect, and they were intentionally written to be imperfect. These are combinations such as Gary, the bus driver. He is a combination of all these mentors, several of them that I just mentioned, that all of the characters in my life that have come to be the greatest spiritual guide, this North Star that I could follow, these shining, bright examples. So as you're looking in your life for those, just remember, don't put up a hurdle so high that nobody can get over. Allow people to help you that have found some traction in the spiritual life, and realize that as human beings, we all have problems. God bless. I hope this was a help to you. I hope the book has helped you. I hope we hear from you at newthoughtlife.org. Come visit us and let us know how this is helping in your own life. God bless.